Hey folks, welcome to another week of Terra Talks. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today. Today we get to do the awesomest panel ever. This is the Women of InfoSec panel. In a lot of ways, this is the panel you don't get to see at too many conferences because now we get to tell you the real truth about what it's like to be a woman in information security. I have with us today an extraordinary group of women. I'm blown away by them. Sandy Clark, Mouse, as many of us know her, is with me again for something like the third time on one of these broadcasts. She keeps coming back, and I don't know why. Katie Masouras is here with us today, as well as Jenny Imhoff Ducharme, Amelie Coran, and Ada Zebra. The amazing people that we have here today are going to be able to talk to you about what it's really like to be a woman in information security and tell you the crazy stories and the good stories, and I think that the people that we've got here today really just kind of speak for themselves. So I'm going to ask you all, if you could please give a couple of sentences introducing yourselves. That would be wonderful. Sandy, if you can lead us off since you know what you're doing.
So my name is Sandy Clark, and I have a rather unusual situation in that I'm a grown-up who went back to get a PhD. I didn't even find the InfoSec community, the hacker community, or the academic community until I was much older than my current cohort. So I deal with both being a woman in a predominantly male field, but also being a lot older than most of the people that are in my field. It's still the absolute best decision I've ever made. And if you are interested in coming to work in this field, by all means, do so. Hello? Am I still on?
Yeah, you are. Jump on in. Somebody else.
Oh. Okay, I'll go next. This is Katie Masouras. I'm Chief Policy Officer for HackerOne. Basically what I do for HackerOne is I guide the disclosure policies for the company, for researchers, for our customers, and I work on legitimizing and promoting security research worldwide. It's certainly gotten a lot of attention recently with some of the legal amendments and some of the export law stuff, and it's been interesting that some of the topics that were considered, sort of softer in technology and info security are suddenly top of mind for all of these hardcore researchers because it's suddenly affecting their lives. So it's just been kind of an interesting few weeks. Before this, I was a security strategist with Microsoft. I worked in the Microsoft Security Response Center and Security Development Lifecycle and started Microsoft's bounty programs. Before that, I was a penetration tester, I was a Linux developer, I was a systems administrator, I was all of these things, and it's been a very interesting journey, so happy to share any wisdom with anyone, male or female.
Okay, well, I'll go next. My name is Amelie Coran. I kind of came up through the ranks of doing a lot of the low-end system engineering when a lot of my class cohorts went into consulting right off the bat. I work for a very large entertainment conglomerate right now as a timeout from public service. Last year I had a chance to take a fellowship out from my home agency, the Department of the Interior, where I was Enterprise Security Architect, to actually go work at the White House in the Office of eGov and IT, working on policy and reviewing the laws regarding cybersecurity and information technology. So I do have one or two words in the current FISMA law due to my redlining, so I can at least say it'll last much longer than I will.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I work with two different community groups within DEF CON. I work with DC 408 and also Vegas 2.0. Vegas 2.0 is the group that puts on the Summit fundraiser every year. I also do a lot of outreach with women in tech, specifically with DEF CON, and Vegas 2.0 sponsors intern women and women new to the industry to come to DEF CON under Vegas 2.0. And I'm looking forward to doing a panel at Black Hat this year on women in tech.
That is awesome.
All right. I'm Ada, and I am mostly an academic with far too much education. I also work I've worked for a few companies. I've done some energy, power stuff, and I've done Internet of Things. But currently, I'm helping out Tara and a few others to do a website called InfoSec Unlocked to try to bring more diversity to DEF CON and other InfoSec groups because, well, we're kind of a minority as women, and there's also a minority of, like, there's QueerCon, and I don't even think there is a group for Black programmers or any other diverse group that's, you know, not traditional people that you see in InfoSec. So we're trying to get the word out to bring conversation to the forefront for all the different groups.
Thank you so very much. It's quite an honor having you here today, and I have to tell you, I was actually talking a little bit to Jenny about this beforehand. We were Facebook messaging each other, and I said, Jenny, you should come and do this awesome thing, and she's like, oh my God, we should have this conversation about imposter syndrome right now, and I said, no kidding, me too, right? So can you, can you folks just start having a conversation about what imposter syndrome is like, what it's done to and for you, and maybe some of your best stories about it. Jump on it if you've got some great ones.
Well, I think I brought it up originally because I'm not in information security or in tech. I am an office administrator in a former life, and then I quit to be a family mom. And in my spare time, I do all the DEF CON outreach and group support. So to me, I don't feel like I have a place up here, but at the same time, I got to remind myself how much of a community I'm building, and that I've done talks, and I'm being called by conferences, and it's scary, but you got to just do it.
I think I can say that one of the reasons I am so late blooming is due to that very thing, to imposter syndrome. So I started out as a programmer, right? One of the things I wrote was a software simulator for NASA, and one of the gate level and the flight control computer for the F-16 airplane. And then I got out of the tech world entirely, sang opera for a while, and when I came back in, it took a long time to believe that I was good enough or the equal of the people who were doing the kind of things that I wanted to do, both in the hacker world and also in the academic world. I thought that they were much smarter, that they knew so much more than I did, and it paralyzed me for a considerable amount of time. Maybe it's my personality or something, but I finally got to the point where I couldn't bear it. I had to at least try, because trying and failing would have been better than not trying at all, and that's why I did it. But one of the awful things is that I lost so much time. What could I have accomplished? What could I have done if I hadn't been so paralyzed by my own fears? Everyone, male or female or young, knowledgeable, well, I expect that the better you are and the more knowledgeable you are, the more you suffer from imposter syndrome. I think research has shown that the people who suffer from it least are the people who think they know a lot more than they actually do. So it's not a unique problem. And if this is an issue that you've got, well, you've got a lot of company, particularly in the InfoSec field. We understand. So you'll be comfortable with us.
So I didn't start in computer science as a field. I started in a separate field that was more friendly to females, and so I started my computer science classes. I would complain to all of my friends that it was really weird that I didn't feel like I fit in there because the boys all just seemed to know things that I'd never even heard about or learned, or nobody talks to girls about those sorts of things. So how could I possibly excel in this field where it takes me 3 times as long to learn, to figure out everything that they figure out so quickly? And it's that kind of feeling like, well, I don't fit in here because it just takes me so much more effort. But then I had a one of the hardest classes that we had, and there are 5 projects due, and we got to project 4, and I was one of 10 people to turn it in, and they were like, well, I started last week, and I'm like, well, I started 3 weeks ago. So all of that hard work and effort had finally paid off, and that, you know, didn't matter how much I felt like I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I'd put in all of the hard work and effort to make it that I did know what I was doing, and maybe I was the only one. So I think we all kind of get that feeling of like, everyone around me knows what they're doing but me.
I've had a couple of feelings like that just as I've even been part of the InfoSec community. I'm probably the latest to the InfoSec community of everybody here. I'm going to take a deep breath and say this because I've been working in this for a while. I am a hacker. And it's a little scary to say that. I mean, I was 3 years after I took my first black badge at DEF CON before I could say that. And it was really frightening to do. I'm legit. Shut up, Cindy. Come on, Mouse. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Mouse, you see women do it at DEF CON. Tell us more about that.
The funny thing is, DEF CON to me is a much more accepting society than some other areas of InfoSec. Particularly for women presenting their own research, because it seems to be absolutely gender blind when it comes to accepting a presentation. And throughout its history, it's had 30% of its presenters female. It's now the odds are very different for attendees, right? There's 16,000 people and no line at the women's bathroom, which is my metric for gender parity. But the core people seem not to notice gender and be much more focused on the actual hack than how the person looks that did the hack. So
I absolutely agree with you, but I'm going to note something, and I want you to comment on this if you could, Sandy. The reason that we're doing this now is because panels like this aren't accepted at DEF CON or most other information security communities, and in a lot of times panels like this are the ways that women get comfortable being on stage at conferences like that. And I mean, I was talking to Nikita, who she wanted more women at DEF CON this year, and she's like, find me more pen testers. I'm like, there aren't any more. You found them all.
But the reason for that, for the fact that the panel is an issue, is because DEF CON is actually focused on what's interesting going on in the hacking community, not the psychology of hackers. And so it's, you know, no one would be at all adverse to setting aside a room and having a group for any females who wanted to discuss gender issues. But that's not the purpose of the conference. The purpose of the conference is, hey, look at this cool hack. Look at this issue that the hacking community is facing. What's going on in security today? And I rather like that because it takes gender out of the picture entirely, which I wish we could do. I know that we can't because it's
Well, Sandy, I was going to say that much as I say is you can't live by hack alone. I mean, coming from where I've worked my way up to where I was, and there's a lot of soft skills that are required, and that's some of the talks I've actually proposed at SHMOO and Black Hat have been kind of teaching, or at least getting people familiar how to work the management chain or how to present stuff, because we deal with a lot of ones and zeros and a lot of abstract concepts, and the folks that we're speaking to usually aren't, I'd say, well versed in it, but can grasp what we're trying to communicate. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of conferences, or at least what I'm seeing, being presented there. And that's genderless. That's just, learning, how to behave like a human being.
That's
so to have more of those talks would be good.
Yes, and there's an entirely new set of tracks now for DEF CON, the 101 tracks, where that would be actually fit in quite well. these are for beginners, how to do something, tutorials and walkthroughs.
I saw the 101 tracks, and it's a great idea. What I'm actually going to ask you, since that's a great topic, I had somebody email me a question. She wanted to know kind of where's the welcome wagon? How do I get into information security as a woman and to some extent guarantee my welcome? Where do I start, and who do I go talk to? And the first thing I thought was, when I emailed her back and I said I'm going to ask this question, was I said, look at every single woman that you see on this panel right here, and if you see us at a conference, just come up and say hi, and we'll point you at a couple of the right people. But what is your recommendations? Everybody's recommendation for where do you start?
So I was going to throw out first, and I don't know how the group's handling right now because the mailing list disappeared, but there's a Women's Society of Cyber Jutsu based out of DC, and that was taking people from various levels of the skill set, folks who've just graduated to folks who've been in the business for a long time, and pairing them up with mentors, much like what you've done, you've done, Tara, but it's trying to educate what's kind of, you have these tools, how are you going to apply them? And where can you get in to learn some of them? Because I know for a lot of you have learned just through, wrote like, well, this is interesting, let me go hack on it, let me go bang on the keyboard for a couple hours and get that knowledge in my head. And that's the forums that I've found most useful.
So I just want to kind of break in for a second, and from a very high level, I normally never do gender-oriented speaking engagements. And that's for a very deliberate reason. And it's because I feel like I want people to focus on my work and not my gender. And I normally try to avoid calling attention to it. I hate being on gendered lists. I find it to be condescending, and dismissive of my accomplishments in the industry in general. And the reason I joined this panel, one, because of all of you. You guys are fantastic. But I think for me, the struggle has been, how do I find the right way to express my individual experiences in this industry that may or may not have anything to do with my gender? I mean, Sandy, you brought up, ageism going on. There's a lot of isms. There's a tendency for people to think about the other in some way and kind of group together. And when you raise that question, Tara, about how, where's the welcome wagon for women, I would kind of up-level that and say, where's the welcome wagon for any newcomer? For me, I'm actually more comfortable in groups of predominantly males. I think my communication style is, would be categorized as much more direct and sort of male and everything. And in a lot of social situations, I don't actually know what to talk about with women. So for me, my own personal, how do I feel welcome? Right? So for me personally, how do I feel welcome?
We talk about nail polish or hair, or
it's it's a mix of technical interests and goofy, comic book stuff and like whatever it is, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, and it's whoever shares those interests with me. And if they happen to be male, then I feel welcome in a group of males. If they happen to be females, cool. Essentially, where's the welcome wagon is where are the people that share your common interests? And that's how I got into hacking in the first place. I started on a BBS. We met up in person. I was the only girl there, but it was cool because I felt like I had been talking to my people, and finally I met my people in real life. And going to my first DEF CON, it definitely felt like home to me. So advice to anybody out there, male or female, or any variation of gender identity or personal identity, find your people, find where you're passionate, what your interests are, and you'll find your welcome wagon.
I'm going to add on to that myself. So the times when I have met people, first off at DEF CON have been like, I went to Hacker Jeopardy and I met a girl that didn't have a wine bottle opener, and I had a wine bottle opener, and she is now like my best friend on Facebook, and we meet every year, Like, I've met some people in the Hardware Hacking Village because that's what I do.
The Wine Out Club. Hold on. Can I come to the Wine Out Club at DEF CON? Because I'm
Yes. I'll bring the wine bottle opener. And then I met people, Hardware Hacking Village. I wore some of my hardware, and people all just talk to you because they're like, oh, you do what I do. I went to a couple hackathons in different locations, and that's a great way to meet people who do things like what you do. So it's just about like finding those experiences where there are people who do what you are interested in, and then start a conversation.
One thing I'd like to add to that is that I see there's a lot of women out there, and this is why we do the sponsorship of interns, is because they're in the right field, but they don't realize the vast job options that information security has. The idea of being a hacker is very intimidating to a lot of people. And so we bring in people that aren't in, you know, hacking schools and InfoSec schools. They're doing coding, they're doing security work maybe on a more lower term, and we bring them into DEF CON. All of a sudden, the lights are going off. They're like, oh, I do fit in. I do have a place. And this is the thing I see missing in DEF CON a lot, is just that open door. People just don't see that the door is open. And so a lot of times it's just grabbing a friend and saying, hey, you know, DEF CON is a place for you. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to know everything. Just being able to walk in and say, you know, that's interesting. I don't know enough about it. Talk to me. And that's where the conversations start. So really, you know, the problem starts with girls getting into the industry itself, not just DEF CON.
I'll give a quick piece of advice on that too. If you don't know anything else to do and you're at an information security conference, any InfoSec conference worth its salt has lots of contests going. Join a contest and get on a team. Almost every one of those contests have regulations and rules requiring that teams have at least one new person on them. They will be thrilled to have you, and that's how I got my awesome, awesome humans at DEF CON.
I met one of my best friends who does all the puzzles for DEF CON, because he and I were sitting next to each other in the audience at a different conference and both began doing a frequency analysis on ciphertext in the program and realized that we were interested in the same thing. So you meet your friends because, or you meet and you fit in because somebody else is doing something like what you're doing, or has a question about what you're doing, or you have a question about what they're doing. But there's always room for new people. Every year, new people astound us with the work that they're doing. The community will never be closed.
And don't be discouraged if you walk into a room and you sit down next to some people and they don't talk to you. That has happened to me before. I went to a LAN party where I sat down next to a couple guys and I said, I want to play StarCraft. And they said, and they went, girls are scary. And then they didn't talk to me the whole time. So if that happens to you, move. Just go somewhere else. Someone else is probably willing to talk to you. And that's when I met one of my other best friends, because I moved to a different table, and he wanted to play StarCraft with me, and his friends wanted to play StarCraft with me, and one of his friends is now my husband. So, yeah, just move.
So I was going to say too, there's another tack to take too, that I'm sure some of us are employed, and we were trying to do some internal talent development. And for, you know, when I was leading our engineering team at a large utility, you know, the way we found, you know, our next hire was look around at the staff that we had. We brought back material from Sam's courses. We brought back videos from various conferences that were on DVD, and we shared them. We made it a lending library, but it got people to kind of come and talk to us. We gauged their interest. We worked with them on projects, and eventually we ended up hiring, you know, people over across teams, because we're able to kind of like do the knowledge sharing in the building, and it kind of, you know, the word got out. It was using a primitive social network before Facebook, but the idea was you know, you can look inside as well. A lot of people don't get a chance to go to cons. I mean, for me, I haven't been to a con in about a year and a half, and I'm feeling a little deprived. You guys are sharing stories, but I mean.
But there are many local small cons. You don't have to do the big huge ones. That are across the country or or outside the U.S. There are local ones almost every month in various areas.
They're all over the place. They absolutely are. One thing I'd like to do is I'd love to. We've talked a little bit, and I want to bring up especially Katie's point about how, you know, often women get pointed out just for their gender, and I'm going to rephrase a question that was asked of me. The question was, what's the coolest hack each of you have done? And I'm not going to ask that question. I'm actually going to ask you the question, what is the coolest hack you've ever seen another woman do? Because I know you guys are going to either tell me the truth or you're going to play it down. So I want you to talk about the coolest hack you ever saw another woman do. And I will start you off by saying, I think it was my first DEF CON, it was 2012, DEF CON 20, and there was a girl, and Mouse is going to remember this, I think her name was Christina, and she discovered like 100 zero days. She's the baddest ass little girl I've ever seen in my entire life. She ruled the conference. 11. I mean, she was crazy. That was the baddest ass girl I've ever seen in information security. She kills it. So, who are some of the amazing hacks? What are some of the amazing hacks you've seen other women do?
I'll start. An old friend of mine from various hacker scenes started her own company. Was the first woman on the cover of Wired, and you know, it's Lamore Freed, who started Adafruit Industries, which is, you know, a DIY hardware hacking company. And what she created, because she believed in herself, she had a vision, she had a dream, she had fun doing what she was doing. You know, she graduated from MIT, brilliant woman, and she took the world by storm. And to me, coolest hack I've seen a woman do.
In that same vein, I think one of the most inspiring female hackers I know is a woman named Jerry Ellsworth. She's also a hardware hacker, and she's done amazing things from reverse engineering the Nintendo games to the company that she's working in right now, which is doing augmented reality glasses. She's fascinating. She'd run a web group for a while where every week you had to present what you were doing, what interesting project you'd been working on, and how far you'd come in your latest hack, just as a way to encourage people to keep working and keep being creative. And she had everybody from a little 5-year-old girl up to people in their 70s and 80s that were happy to present a new project. So she's incredibly inspiring, brilliant, and an amazing woman.
I actually have two, and one of them happens to be sitting across from me on the screen here, which would be Sandy. She taught me how to do my first bit of lockpicking. That just opened my eyes up, and you know, learning how to do combination locks and stuff like that. But just taking the time to sit with somebody and work through that. I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be a grandiose hack. It's just the idea of imparting knowledge, which is amazing. The second one would be, oh gosh, lost her name now, Kristen Paget.
Oh, yes.
Because it was there, she came out as trans, and before the talk started, everybody was talking about gender, but she diffused the whole thing and was able to impart that knowledge about the NFC insecurities in the cards, and the got people to look beyond whatever presentation it was and got to think about the, you know, her hack or the technology that was going on. And through humor and being herself, that was what was really, really cool. She hacked the audience at that. She got past their biases, and I thought that was really cool.
I've got kind of two as well, because I just recently went to Maker Faire, and there was a girl who had made a dress because she thought these fiber optic things were really nifty, but she wanted to be able to change the colors of them, and oh, it was just amazing the way that the dress like draped with all these fiber optic cables that were all different colors, and they changed with the way that she walked, and it was so cool. And
I knew we were going to start talking about fashion sometime during this.
I want to grow up to be just like her one day, you know, kind of thing. But I have a friend who's on. Every time I do a hackathon, she's on my team, and I will always have her on my team, and I will never trade her out for anyone else, because she has this way of looking at projects where you'll give her a project. It doesn't matter if it's a school project or if it's a hackathon project, and you'll say, I want it to do X, and she'll do X, and then she'll do Y, Z, A, B, and C, because she'll just be like, well, I made it do this one thing, but it was only kind of cool, so I did these 5 other things that were kind of cool, so pick one and it'll do that. And we had Cylon hats for our team theme, where we had this little strip of LEDs that went back and forth. There's a little red dot, and she made those rainbow color, and the rainbow color switched back and forth. The direction it went, like,
So cool.
she just did all these fun things. Like, every time you gave her a project, she could find like the 5 things that it would do more interesting than what she would even thought of to begin with. Yes, I will always have her on my team.
Ginny, you want to give us a hero or two?
I have an interesting one because I don't actually want to give her name. She's not one to be in the limelight, but she is a big member of DEF CON, I will say that much. And one of the interesting things she did is she hacked me, is the best way I can say it, because she showed up at my first conference. I showed up, and she asked me, oh, who are you? I said, I'm Jenny. And she asked, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm just a girlfriend. She turned around and walked away. And I thought that was the rudest thing that could possibly happen to me. And I didn't know how to respond. And, later on I kind of asked, my husband or boyfriend at the time, I was like, who was that? And he's like, oh, that's so-and-so, she's amazing. And I would just kind of ate it. And I was just like, oh, maybe I won't tell him what happened. And then the following year at DEF CON, I run into her again. And I don't think she remembered who I was, or maybe she did. I don't know. But she did the same thing. She said, oh, who are you? And this time I changed my answer. And I said, oh, I'm Jenny, and, with Vegas 2.0, and I kind of grew up around computers, and so I'm here to learn more. And boom, she looked right me in the eye, and she's like, well, tell me more. And the whole experience just blew my mind, because it wasn't her judging me for being just a girlfriend. It was myself judging me for being just a girlfriend. And that was really my first introduction to DEF CON and DEF CON women.
That brings up a really important point about confidence. And, they say that the way that men express their, traditionally express their accomplishments is, they stand right up front and they say what they did and they take credit for it, whereas women tend to diminish their accomplishments and whatnot. I was talking to an intern at Microsoft, and she was a coder, she was a developer. The internship program at Microsoft was competitive and paid, and you had to apply like a regular job. And all the undergrads who got those internships, it was expected they'd complete their internships and then be offered a full-time job at Microsoft. So this is, this wasn't like just a throwaway kind of internship. So I asked her what she did, and she very similarly, kind of diminished what she was working on, and she didn't talk so much about what she did. She talked about what she wasn't doing, as if, all of these hardcore things like, oh, I don't touch kernel code, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. I just stopped her, and I said, stop diminishing yourself. The world is going to do plenty of that for you. You do not need to help it along. And she just kind of stopped and looked at me and then said, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And I was like, yeah. So next time somebody asks you what you do, you tell them exactly what you do, and it's a fantastic thing that you do. And don't bother diminishing yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think every one of us does that, and Sandy's actually going to remember something that happened. Mouse, you remember when Nikita, through some glitches of communication, wasn't in the first DEF CON Unlocked Hangout that we did, and I spent like 5 minutes doing nothing but apologizing, and finally John Callis, who's extraordinary and awesome and a dear friend and mentor of mine, behind the scenes was like, Tara, shut up and stop apologizing. And I went, yes, sir. and sometimes what you need is somebody else to notice that you're apologizing too much, that you're diminishing yourself, and that's really, I think, where mentorship and someone else helping you with your communication can really help a lot. And one of the questions, Katie, I had somebody who wanted to ask a question about something that you talked about, which was confidence earlier. How do you all kind of muster up that confidence at conventions and stuff like that? I mean, for all that we would love to not talk about the fact that women just aren't participating, that they're leaving tech in greater and greater numbers, it'd be great if we could all avoid the subject, but the truth is sooner or later we have to have some conversation and offer some tools rather than, whining and wailing and moaning. So what are the tools that you use to show this confidence, to really be able to say to somebody, I'm a badass CEO, I'm a web developer, I'm a hacker, I'm a founder, I do these things. How do you say that in person, each of you, what do you do personally about that?
Personally, I karaoke. This is one of I'm dead serious. I am so serious about this. So I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of keynotes. I do a lot of things where I'm supposed to not just talk about technical concepts, but I'm actually supposed to weave a story. I'm supposed to be entertaining. I am petrified every single time. So it's like exercising my weakest muscle. I go and I karaoke and I sing my heart out and I don't give a damn and I give it my all. And then what happens is when I get up on stage to give an actual talk, I go through the same process. I'm afraid. I get the tightness in my stomach and my throat, and then suddenly I realize, oh my God, I do not have to sing. Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be easy. And at that point, it is actually easy. So I exercise my weakest muscle. I continually practice being present, being on stage, essentially conveying that stage presence. And karaoke, that's my secret. It is.
There's a lot to be said for faking it, for pretending that you're more confident than you are. Many of us in the hacker community are sort of non-neurotypical too. So if you get us talking about the thing that we're really interested in, you forget all about yourself. You're talking about this new tech or this new way of doing something, or a protocol, or a problem you've just found, or a question that you're asking, and that absorbs everything, and you can lose your sense of self. So how that helps, I would say that focus on the work that you're doing and not on what people think about you is the best advice I can give.
Oftentimes it's helpful, and this is my other background coming out, to remember that you're thinking about you more than they are. You're more worried about nitpicking and what you're saying exactly and how you're portraying yourself than anyone else is. Everyone else is thinking about themselves. So if you can just kind of remind yourself, okay, it's all right, I'm just going to talk about what I do, and it's going to be okay. And when I explain the things that I think are cool, then maybe they'll think that those things are cool as well. Then to be like, oh, no, I have to downplay it because I'm worried about how they think about me. They're not really thinking about you necessarily. A lot of times they're thinking about themselves.
And that's a really good point, particularly with regard to women in a predominantly male field, because we are socialized to pay more attention to how people think about us. Whether we're dressed appropriately, are we too loud, are we interrupting too frequently, instead of losing all of that. And that's really something that you have to work on, because that is not part of being female, it's part of being socialized female, and those are two separate things.
So I think one thing people can do is going on that socializing the female is look into your local community, and there's a lot of geek girl meetups that are happening now, especially in the Bay Area. There's girl geek dinners, there's women who code, there's coder chicks, and even if you don't code or you're just barely affiliated with this stuff, they love for you to show up. And it's great because just sitting around a group of women and sharing what you do, you slowly start, putting your toes in that water, and you start realizing your self-worth and that you do have something to show and you do have something to say. And you really start finding that voice from a smaller woman to, a big group, like a stage. And usually the stage, you kind of just got to be pushed onto it the first time. But yeah, I strongly suggest for everyone to look into their local communities, because there's a lot of these groups that are growing.
That's a really good point about doing a small group kind of socialization and then potentially doing your first presentations in a small group. One of the things that can also help you connect with an audience is being able to walk around and talk to them before you actually get up to present. That's something that I usually try to do even if I'm doing a keynote. I hate that whole, you've got to wait in the background and then just come on stage like you're some kind of a big deal. I much prefer actually walking around the audience and talking to people and kind of getting a sense of who these people are, having them really connect with me. And then when I go back, it's like you've got that quantum entanglement already going, and you can feel that energy coming back to you. So it's a really good idea to start with those small group events, because you can kind of work the room before you actually have to get up in front of them, and it feels like you're talking to friends.
All right, let me encourage any of the folks that are watching right now, please feel free to go ahead and ask questions if you'd like to in the Q&A application here inside the Hangout. You can also send your questions to me on Twitter, and I know one of the, we got a question already from Scott Simmons, so I'd love to have the women on the panel address the question. This is kind of, he says, this is kind of a cliche question. It's not really. It's an important one to ask. He says, I feel like the more perspectives I hear on this, the better. What can the men of InfoSec do to help encourage women to contribute and thrive in this sector?
Ask them questions. Include them in the conversation. Never downplay a woman's ideas for the most part. You know, don't attack if you can help it. Like, you have a conversation, and this is going to generalize too much, but for the way that women are generally socialized in comparison to the way that men are generally socialized, a man talking to another man will have like a competition of sorts, right? I've done this, well I've done this, well I've done this, well I've done this, well I've done this, right? Women will try to keep each other kind of at the same level. And this is averages, I mean, not all people, but if you're having a conversation with a woman, ask her questions, and she will ask you questions, generally, not always. But if you're trying to do that competition, like, well, I've done this, and then you say, oh, well, I did this, then they're going to feel like, oh, well, then what I've done is useless. But also, a lot of times, what I've been doing, what other people have been doing that I talk to, men that I talk to, is it's like trying to get younger girls into technology, which I feel like we don't do hardly enough of.
I see we're succeeding now. Jenny's got the baby in the background right now.
Sorts of things. From a young age. Talk to girls about things that you would talk to boys about, just the same.
That's it.
So, yeah.
Socialization begins in the cradle. Go ahead a minute.
So I was going to say is Google just released their numbers for this year after they pledged $150 million for diversity. Granted, I don't necessarily know where all that $150 million is going, but they're trying to put it in the idea of scholarships and development. But unfortunately, that pipeline is really thin right now. I mean, we were talking before we started about hey, we want to get these female pen testers together, and I want to hire some. Well, we pretty much have the entire pool here. It's a very shallow pool because we haven't nurtured that pipeline, and that's one of the things is we can invest in those that are coming through school now, but we've got that that thin time there of folks who didn't benefit from this. So we're lucky here that we've been in the career for a while, but we're going to have this gap, and that's the problem is trying to find out how to bring those folks who may not, proudly wear a hacker, like I'm a hacker or whatever, but they may have other technical skills where the security stuff can be taught, and bring them into the, as Ada said, bring them into the conversation, bring them into the thought process of working through a problem, and for me, it's like I don't care what gender you are, if you're going to add something to the work, by all means, bring the person on.
I mean, and I'm coming from a place that I've heard a lot of women come from, although not everyone. Once again, I don't want to generalize. Where like I asked for Matchbox cars for Christmas and I got Barbie dolls. I asked for Legos and I didn't get Legos. I asked to help my dad fix the computer, and he said, no, your brother's going to help me fix the computer. And I asked my grandfather to go fishing, and he said, girls don't go fishing. Like, I wanted to do all these boy things, and I wasn't included in those sorts of things. And the door was kind of shut for me for those things. And so I always say, if you have a girl, include her in everything, anything she wants to do. Don't shut the door on her and tell her no, that you're kind of not welcome here,
I think one thing that we also have to remember. Oh, Katie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly important to get, younger people interested in technology. I think it's important for future generations in general because we are in such an interconnected society at this point, and there's a definite labor shortage across all of technology, not just security. But I want to bring it back to, in the professional setting, I think the original question might have been, what can men do to help women right now, right? So I think men and women need to be very observant in a professional setting or in a conference setting or whatnot, and notice and try and change what is happening in front of them. So one of the biggest things that I notice in meetings, for example, you'd see people talking around the room, and when a woman would start talking, they were more often interrupted than the men. And so if people just raise their level of awareness slightly, what I used to do in meetings where I'd see this happen, if a man started talking over a woman, I'd say, hold on a second, I really wanted to hear what Lisa had to say. Lisa, please finish your thought. So I would just, it's not being aggressive, it's literally saying, no, I didn't hear the thing I wanted to hear. So you kind of do this pushback. So men and women can do this equally. It doesn't matter. And if you notice people who are being marginalized, it doesn't matter if they're a female or a minority or any of the other things, notice, observe, and try and change the course of what's happening right in front of you. And you don't actually have to be a jerk about it. You can just interrupt the interrupter.
So in addition to that, there is the problem that frequently women's voices are not heard. I have had the experience where I have made comments or brought up new creative ideas, had the group I was with ignore them as if I hadn't spoken at all, and then a few minutes later have my same idea brought up by a male. Whether that was deliberate or not, I don't know, but it's happened more than once. There is also a subset, if we are to look at something like Gamergate, there's a subset of males who fear women in this field and do everything they can to bully, harass, and try and get women to be afraid and to stay silent and to leave. Males in particular can address this behavior by stopping their peers when they see this. It's not enough for women to join together and say, we don't want this to happen. If the males in the pack don't allow it to happen, the lesser males, those betas, all through omegas, will stop, because that's how any social group changes behavior over the long term. So it's imperative that males who want to do something notice the behaviors that are stopping, as Katie said, observe, and then act on that, and it will change.
I'm so glad that you got a chance to tell me that, Sandy, to tell all of us that. I know that we all have this, the voice in our head sometime that means that we don't want to talk about the people that are sometimes a problem in the field. And the truth is, I think that the only way that we really solve these problems is to acknowledge that there's always going to be some people who take it upon themselves to make other people miserable, and those are going to be of all genders and of all kinds. It's just that these are the people who happen to be in a powerful situation right now. So it just takes a little extra time and effort, and just like Katie said, being observant, really observant about the people who are in the room. And I love Neely's point about it as well. We have one last question I think we'll do today, and then I'll ask the women in the panel to speak up with the last piece of advice. The last question that I have here is, it's a tough one, but if you could all give some examples of what to do when you don't know what to do. Specifically, this woman's asking, what do I do when I'm in a situation in InfoSec, she's in a job in InfoSec where she's very unwelcome and she's being targeted, and she wants to leave the industry because of the treatment she's experiencing at this company. And I see this happen again and again. What do you tell women who want to leave the industry because of their experiences at a company in InfoSec?
I think the best advice I can give is call me. I don't care if you don't know me. You have to have that peer group, and I think the one thing that gives anybody strength in any industry is their ability to network and have that group that tells you, yes, you're wrong, or yes, you're right. And girls just don't have that. We don't have that network built, and that kind of goes to why I'm encouraging people to get involved in their groups and get involved in DEF CON, and why we do these panels, because, you know, every girl and every woman on this panel right now, we're all going to be a little more bonded, and now we have built our network further. So, you know, as a girl, having been in those positions, I've worked in very male-oriented industries in any job I've ever had. The best thing you can do is reach out, even if it's someone not in your own office or not in your own company, because they'll give you that reality check, and you'll, one, know you're not alone, and two, you build that network. They might be able to get you in touch with somebody else. You know, oh, I know someone else who's dealing with that same issue, and this is how they handled it. And now you guys can go to DEF CON. That's the biggest problem with DEF CON. Everyone leaves because they're not welcomed. Well, now you're just, you know, perpetuating the problem. And that's why I'm constantly trying to bring new girls in and bring them under the safety and guidance of my group. That way you have that security of a friend. You're not coming alone. And that's the worst thing any of us can do, is show up alone.
So
I would say, oh, go ahead, Kate.
Well, I just wanted to say, you know, that woman's particular question, what do you do when you're so uncomfortable at a job that you want to leave the company? My advice is leave the company.
Yeah.
You just heard how hard it is to find technical, talented, soft-skilled, talented hires in InfoSec, in IT, etc. Guess what? There's a job shortage. So if you feel uncomfortable at your current job, leave. And you will probably get a pay raise, and you better negotiate that salary, and you better negotiate that bonus, and do all of those things, and leave. That is my advice.
Yeah.
Preach it about negotiation. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I have been at companies that I did not feel comfortable in. I was just chatting about it on the side, where I had a gentleman who poached all of my projects and told me he didn't like me because I wasn't feminine enough and I was too outspoken, and he wanted me to be just like the non-technical project managers because they were feminine. And I was like, fuck this, I don't need this, and I left. So,
what does that even mean, feminine? Like,
because the PMs were so nice and kind and let him speak first, and I don't know, they were more girly than I was, and it just didn't work out for me. And so I just left. Yes, submissive. Yeah, I left.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, and that's exactly what you should have done, was leave.
But don't leave the industry.
Yeah, just leave that company. I mean, I've been to other companies that are great, and you just feel accepted, and there are other women there, and I mean, not a lot of them all the time, but you still feel like it's so much more comfortable. It just feels so much more accepting, and you don't need to put up with that. I mean, there's just no reason to put up with that.
Yeah, particularly so many guys are welcoming too. I mean, the subset that's harassing or bullies or whatever is not the community at whole. It's simply the way things have been for so long that people take it as a given. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, last summer when I went to OMB, it was the fact that, you know, I didn't have to establish my technical credentials, because I mean, you're at that level, there's kind of a little, you know, wide berth that you're given. So, you know, I bonded with people there by other means. I nerded out. You know, I found the stuff that I enjoyed and found people I worked with who enjoyed that, and we nerded out. So, you know, my boss at the time, Stephen Van Rokel, you know, crowned me chief geek. So, you know, that's a, you know, pretty high thing to have. But it was nice that you weren't trying to compete. It was just like, you know, we will respect you for who you are and what your personality quirks are, or, you know, what makes you you. And that's the welcoming environment that I think we all kind of strive for. And I miss it. But you know, those are the, you know, not to berate those times where you really have the crappy environment, but you will find a good environment. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work, but, you know, as we all mentioned, you know, good, talented people are in demand, and you don't have to take, you know, crap from anybody. Is that better from watching Language Airfare?
We didn't get a chance really to talk to. We didn't get a chance to mostly because I think we're all kind of tired of the topic at this point about sexual harassment in general in technology and InfoSec. The truth is that, as I was just saying to some of these ladies on the background chat that we have going right now, honestly, it's become such background noise that I'm really exhausted with talking about it. I would so much rather try to keep this as positive as possible and provide resources as opposed to kind of rehashing all the stories that we already know at this point. And instead just say, look, this is about providing a resource for people and saying, look, even if there are people that make you feel unwelcome, there are so many more that want you to be here and be around. And I should note, even though this is specifically a Women in InfoSec panel, that all of the resources and all of the conversations we've been having apply to every excluded person. And we've been, I think, pretty good about that during the course of this. We haven't mentioned the LGBTQ population at DEF CON, mostly because, honestly, I feel like they've got their crap together better than most people do. QueerCon at DEF CON is awesome, and I am so glad to see those resources. Yeah, and they throw the best parties. Oh, seriously, go to their parties. If anybody wants to talk at least a little bit about that, the cross-gender stuff, we could. But the truth is that I feel like we've done a pretty good job, I think, of making sure that this is about resources and being welcoming and talking about the issues while still saying, look, this is an open field to so many people. So what I think I'm going to do now is stop the questions and just ask everybody here if you could give one last piece of advice to women who are new or in the field, who maybe are having some bad experiences now and considering leaving the industry. If you could please give one piece of advice, I would love to hear it.
So I'll start. So the thing is, for me, is you know, we've got academics, we have policy people, we have researchers, we have hackers, there is so much in this community that you can do. So if it's the job that you're doing, you know, it's a specific task, if it's network monitoring or pen testing or whatever, if you're tired of that or you just don't like it, there's plenty of things to do. And play with that. Don't ever leave the industry, because there's so much more variety here than I think a lot of other people, you know, will give credit to. And that's the chance. I think another thing coming from having done forensics and incident response and seeing stuff that I believe for, you know, I've left doing that work, but I'm still within the industry. I've found ways to blend that experience and that knowledge to what I do nowadays, which is more enterprise architecture rather than straight up security. But it helps inform and it helps give me background. And I think that's another thing too, is, you know, there's no reason to give up. There's always ways to reapply yourself, and you'll be much more respected because you have that broad background.
We're all politely waiting for the next person to go. Look at how polite we are. Okay.
Everybody stop being polite and jump on it and make this like a Fox News Channel panel, will you?
We're literally trying not to interrupt each other. This is adorable. Okay, so, and feel free to interrupt me, by the way.
What? I can't hear you. What? Your voice
is exactly that.
Oh, it's too high-pitched.
No, I think advice that I would give to anybody trying to enter any new field, you know, understand that you're going to be learning your entire career. Don't be embarrassed about the learning you have to do at the beginning. If you're not learning at the end, you're a dinosaur. So obviously, you're going to be learning your entire career. Don't be embarrassed or self-conscious about it. Another thing, you know, I get a little weird with physics sometimes, and you know, if time is an illusion, think about it in terms of you've already done it. Whatever it is you've decided you're going to do, you've already done it. It's like Harry Potter observing himself, you know, casting the, whatever that was, the stag thing. He went through a little time loop, and he actually knew that he was able to cast, what's that thing called? Somebody tell me.
The Patronus.
The Patronus, right. So he knew he had done it because he had been able to witness himself do it in this little time loop thing.
It's the time turner. It was the one that McGonagall gave Hermione, the time turner that let her turn back. That's what the gizmo was called.
So, yeah, so like my point here is that, you know, picture yourself in the best outcome that you could think of and assume that you can do it. Assume it's going to take work, assume it's going to take learning, assume it's going to take help and mentorship from everybody around you, from your peers, from people who are far ahead of you in their careers, and occasionally, yes, you do learn things from people who are brand new to the industry. So don't be afraid to try something. And I gotta say, some of the best career decisions I've ever made were absolute leaps of faith, and they were faith in myself. It was like, hey, I studied molecular biology and math in school, and I was like, yeah, I want to cure diseases and everything, and then I decided, after working on a couple of really cool research projects, like Human Genome Project, I was like, I actually don't want to do this for a living. So I went back into computing as a systems administrator, basically as like I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to evolve myself in this direction. And every single leap I took was one that was biting off more than I could chew and just believing I could do it, believing I could learn enough, believing I could do it. So, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is.
On that note, Katie, in the same way, I've never taken a job that I knew how to do when I took it. And I can tell you I've been scared to death at times. I've cried myself to sleep a number of times thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. If I could give any advice, it would be this. You have no idea what you are capable of. And that will, as long as you keep learning, as long as you keep trying, push those boundaries, what you achieve is going to be amazing. You're going to be afraid. You're always afraid. But life is risky. I mean, it's risky to drive your car. You want to take the kind of risks that would bring you the rewards that you want to have. It's really worth it. And accept the fact that it's going to be hard and it's going to be scary, and do it anyway.
Yeah, what does Wayne Gretzky say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
So, talking about the jobs that you guys are talking about, especially Mouse saying that she took jobs that she didn't have any knowledge in. Yeah, there was a study that was done that suggested that if men match up with 60 or 70% of job requirements, they'll apply. But women won't unless they meet 90 to 100%, generally speaking. So, be a man. Sorry, there's loud stuff. Be a man. Apply for the job anyway. You can always learn things while you're on the job and do those things, so long as you have the passion and the desire to. My advice is to talk to other women in your field, even if you're scared. And I think a lot of the time, so as a big awkward nerd, a lot of the times I'm very scared of talking to other women because I feel like they're going to be the kind of women that will just dismiss me and judge me and not want to talk to me. But I have never had that experience in tech. Because I find that most of the women I end up talking to are also big, awkward nerds like I am. So try not to feel too scared and just approach and just talk with them because they know what you're going through because they often are going through what you are going through. And just be big, awkward nerds together. It'll be fine. And then I just, take another second to plug InfoSec Unlocked group because we have isunlocked.com and we're trying to get more people there to kind of discuss the topics more and discuss places where they feel more comfortable, like different groups at DEF CON or different conferences that have been really accepting of them, and people who go to these kinds of things are
and if you'd like to know
accepted
more
at different
about
conferences.
InfoSec Unlocked, I would really encourage you to reach out to Ada over Twitter. There's going to be so much more that she really needs to tell you, and we're going to run out of time pretty quickly here, so I'm going to
And we
thank her
really need
and then
help.
move on to Jenny for our last piece of advice.
So my last piece of advice I can give is please go to DEF CON, Black Hat, and find me. I'm the little tiny girl in a lab coat, and I'm always in a lab coat, so it's easy to find. Find any lab coat, they'll find me for you. And I don't care if you're a man or woman or whatever you identify as, find me and let me know that you're here to support because I'll get you in touch with the right people. And even one thing you can do as a male in the industry is just say, hey, I'm here to help because you might have a specialty that I know a girl is looking for somebody to help answer questions, and I'll be able to point her to you. And so a lot of this all comes back to networking. The best thing you could do is just find me and say hi. Find any of us and say hi.
Thank you so very much, Jenny. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you, Mouse and Katie and Amelie and Ada. This has been an extraordinary experience, and thank you so very much for being here and doing this with us today. We're going to continue next week with a conversation about self-care for entrepreneurs. For those of you who are way better than I am at taking care of myself while running 3 or 4 companies and initiatives, we'll talk more about some of the great ways that you can take care of yourself and focus especially on some of the ways that women need to really take care of themselves as they start companies in technology. Thank you again so much to everybody here. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. We hope you got a lot of great resources out of this and look forward to speaking with you again soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.